what we're doing today is replacing the sway bar link or the connecting rod. That's this guy right here. And this is a brand new one. So as you can see, this is the original part, 18 years old. It's just really worn and it just needs to be replaced. Even the bushings are all cracked up. So we'll replace this guy on both sides, as well as the bushing, the sway bar bushing, which lives, let me get a better light, right there. So I'll be doing this with basic hand tools. You can use an impact driver if that's easier for you. I also have the wheel removed so we have a better view. So let's go ahead and tackle the job. So we'll start by spraying down the parts here with WD-40. And they've been on here for a number of years. So just give it a good spray. Let it soak for a few minutes. Makes a big difference. Now this top nut happens to be a 17 millimeter. Give yourself a long wrench. The longer the better. Gives you more leverage. And then this is a 12 mil to put around the body of this connecting rod to keep it from moving, essentially. And that's it. Now these come off, again, spray it with WD-40, PB Blast, or something just to lubricate this. Whoop. Now once this top nut is loose enough, you can go ahead and use a ratcheting wrench. You can use a socket and a ratchet, whatever you want to use. Now, you still want to try to keep this stabilizer link from moving. You want to try to keep it as stable as possible. The reason behind that, if you take a look on the bottom here of the stabilizer link, the rubber is essentially gone. It's just peeling off. Now, what I suspect will happen, as often as it is with older stabilizer links, when we try to remove this bottom bolt, chances are this rod will also rotate. Now if that happens, then it just makes it a little bit harder to remove. And what we'll do is just remove this part of the connecting rod or the stabilizer link, and then we'll probably just use a vice grip to keep this from moving so we can back out the nut. It's very common, unfortunately, when you deal with older stabilizer links, especially in this part of the country where there's snow and grime and grit. It just happens. You can't do anything about it. Makes it a little bit more difficult, but just stick with it and whoop, and you'll get it out. And then just remove the nut. You have a washer, then a rubber bushing, which will replace. It actually is included when you purchase a brand new stabilizer link. And again, do both sides when you do this. Just don't do one side. Do the driver and the passenger side. Now for these two bolts holding down the bushing, there's a rubber bushing right here that goes over the stabilizer bar. Now if you don't have air tools, if you don't have an impact wrench, the area here is extremely tight. So what I'm going to use, this is again a 14 millimeter. We'll place a wrench right over it. And then I'm going to get a socket, and the socket will fit over the end. And then I'll use a little extension. So in other words, something like this, okay? Place it over the end. This will give you a lot more leverage. And then, there you go. You just want to get it loose. Once you get it loose, you can use a ratcheting wrench or a socket. Really, on this first bolt, we'll need a ratcheting wrench. It's very, very tight here, but this is all that you need to do. Okay. And for the left side here, it's actually a little bit easier if we use a socket and a ratchet. And again, place this little extension over it. There you go. Okay, so then you have a little cover here. This comes right off. Okay. And then this is where the bushing lives, obviously. Just remove it. As you can see, I already loosened the other side, the passenger side. And this is your old, let me turn on a light here. This is your old bushing. Actually not in horrible shape. It's more of the stabilizer link. This thing is shot, so let's get this out of the way. Now let's go ahead and try to remove this. Again, I suspect that the inside of this will rotate. This is a 14 millimeter on the bottom here. So let's see what happens. And if we take a look, I don't even need a socket and a ratchet here, just completely rotating in the body. So we'll remove this section and then we'll just attach vice grips, back out the nut, and we'll be in good shape. If you have a cutting tool, by all means, you can also cut it, but we'll just use vice grips. I'm going to use a large screwdriver here. I'll show you in a moment what it looks like. And then I'm going to hit the end of the screwdriver with a 3-pound hammer. Try to dislodge this here. Alright. Now what I did here real quick on the end of the stud, because it's perfectly round, to get a really good grip on this would be very, very difficult using vice grips. Now again, you can cut this off by all means if you have a cutting tool, but what I used is a Dremel, and I just scored up the end of the stud. This will allow the vice grip to get a really good grip, or the best grip possible. And you don't have to go too crazy, just a little bit around the end of the stud here. So we'll go ahead and attach on the vice grip here. And use good vice grips. This happens to be a, let me tighten them up a little bit, a Craftsman. But you need a very good pair of vice grips. Let me move the camera. So I had to move the camera out of the way. It's very, very tight. This whole working area, the camera, forget it. It's just was in the way getting the vice grips on. But regardless, get the vice grips on there. We have the socket, and here we go. So it's turning a little bit. And there we go. You see, it just grabbed onto one of those notches, and that's your chance to remove the nut. Oh, finally. Good grief. What a pain in it. You know what. Alright. Alright, there it is. So before we reinstall the bushing, along with the clamp here, first thing to note is you have a slit. The slit faces toward the front of the vehicle. So in this case, we'll reinstall it like so, and the clamp as well has an arrow pointing toward the front of the vehicle. So just make note of that when you reinstall these parts. Now what you want to do is just get everything lined up, put the parts back on, and loosely tighten up these bolts. And once everything is aligned, then go ahead and tighten them down on both sides. If you do want to torque these bolts, you have to drop the vehicle, and once the weight is on the suspension, then you tighten them down. On this vehicle, these are around 40 foot-pounds. This is around 12. I believe down here is around 25 or so. I'll note it in a few moments.